Hello and welcome to Tuesday, and it is our shared reading, and we're just going to go over some more vocabulary, more about the workhouses themselves. As we know, Jim and his mum have gone to the workhouse. His mum has gone to the infirmary, which is basically a hospital within the workhouse, or a hospital ward, I should say. So let's just find out a bit more information about the workhouse. So, a workhouse was a huge building. Let me just put this from current slide. There we go. The workhouse was a huge building built for very poor people to live and work. They were poor for a number of reasons: ill health, old age, single mothers, orphan children, or purely because they couldn't find work. Able-bodied, unemployed people had no choice but to enter a workhouse. The alternative was prison. Now, I know we said on the previous question from yesterday that some people thought prison was a better place. So there's a bit of an argument there for both. So, history of the workhouse. The first written record of a workhouse dates back to 1652 in Exeter. The threat of life in the workhouse was meant to encourage able-bodied poor people to find work. Unfortunately, it resulted in many turning to crime. So you can see workhouses actually started nearly 100 years before the Victorians. So did you know the word pauper meant a person who received relief from public charity? And how do you think poor people felt about life in the workhouse? So you don't need to answer these questions. Okay, there we go. So clothing. Uniforms had to be worn in the workhouses. These were made from dark, coarse, so coarse meaning rough, materials. The uniforms were designed to be uncomfortable. Women wore plain, shift dresses with an apron. Men wore jackets, breeches, and a striped cotton shirt with a cap. So if you're going to come World Book Day dressed as a Victorian from a workhouse, you could wear a flat cap if you've got one. But did you know some workhouses even made different types of women wear different clothing? For example, unmarried pregnant women were made to wear red dresses. I wonder why that would be. Families. So if the man of the house was unable to work or find a job, the whole family had to move into the workhouse. The family was then split up. Men lived and worked in one area of the workhouse, women in a different area, and children lived in another part of the building. Very young children were allowed to stay with their mothers, but as soon as they were old enough, they had to move into the children's area. From then on, they only spent a short amount of time with their parents once a week. So imagine that, being in the kind of same massive building, but not being able to see parents, but only for once a week. That must be awful. Work was hard in the workhouse. The guardians made sure that inmates earned their keep money. Men had to complete jobs such as breaking stones, working in the fields, grinding corn with heavy millstones, and chopping wood. Women's tasks included kitchen duties, laundry, spinning, sewing, weaving, and scrubbing floors and walls. It says guardians ran the workhouses and made the rules. And I think in this text it refers to that person as the master. Food. So in the 1800s, so that's after this period of time, food largely consisted of bread and cheese, broth and some meat very occasionally. Breakfast was a thin porridge called gruel. So there is reference in this book to gruel. Workhouses brewed their own beer, so inmates were given watered-down beer. Sometimes if a workhouse had its own garden, there might be potatoes at the midday meal with boiled meat. That would be very rare. Pudding was either rice pudding or steamed suet pudding. Milk was often diluted with water, and fruit was non-existent. So none of this kind of 5-a-day stuff. There are lots of more slides, but I don't want to go on sort of too much because it's good to sort of read the book and learn about workhouses as we go through the book as well. So in the book, it does mention about broth, and broth is like it's a diluted soup, especially in those days. So it would have been, first of all, they would have had water with leftover meat, basically leftover vegetables, and they would probably sort of lightly boil it, shove in stuff they didn't want, basically, often leftover stuff. That was then. Obviously, broth is a bit more sort of different these days. And then eat it. If you're lucky, you might get a piece of meat in there. I don't think it was very nice. And you might get a little bit of bread, like a crust or a few crumbs, a little bit of bread, but not much. And you just think that, these children probably working 12 hours a day, but with hardly any food. So, they'd be absolutely exhausted, wouldn't they? Milk, so they might have a bit of rice pudding if they're lucky. Watered down milk. So you just think, where would they get their energy from? They'd just be absolutely shattered. Anyway, so I'm going to stop there. It also mentions in the book today about sluice. So what that would be is it mentions about sluicing the children with cold water. So it's like, obviously they didn't have showers like we have today, so they'd have like a bucket of water and they'd probably throw some water, maybe with a ladle or something, over the children, or scoops of water. So it's like kind of rinsing them, just giving them a bit of a wash basically, but the water would be really cold, especially in the winter. Absolutely freezing cold. Anyway, so I'm just going to stop there.